morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. This evening's program is titled The Crisis in American Education. And nobody better equipped to talk about the crisis in American education than Dr. Michael Sonnleitner, who has been on the show in the past. And I've enjoyed him immensely because I always learn something more from this fine, fine gentleman. And I don't go overboard with my compliments and my superlatives. And thank you for coming on again.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah. How are you feeling right now?
Good, though I think you might have overdone it with the introduction. I don't think that I'm the best to necessarily speak about this, but I've been around for a while and I have a few things I can share.
If I said the best, I take it back. You're a delightful human being, yeah, in many ways, and I seem to learn something more each time I listen to you. And then I look at your credentials in black and white in print, and I see all the stuff you've done through the years.
I'm a lot more impressive on paper than I am in person.
No. So good to have you here. And I'm a little less nervous than I usually am because I know you enough to not be afraid that you'll ask me a question that stumps me. And how are you feeling now? Are you scared, angry?
No, I'm just fine. I'm thinking of how I might stump you.
That doesn't take much.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the crisis in American education. And that is a far-reaching topic. And you're interested in it now because you're running for a position here in our city of Portland, Oregon, that is critically important in many, many ways beyond just education. And what is that position you're running for?
It's for the PCC Board of Directors. That's Portland Community College Board of Directors. And it's a board of 7 people elected by district. And I would be in Zone 3 of Portland, Oregon, USA.
Okay.
Right? About 98,000 voters
Yeah.
who will have a chance of taking a whack at me.
And why are you running for this position?
Well, because I do see the crisis in education. I see it in my experience every day when I'm in the classroom. And I've felt the changes over my 26 years at Portland Community College.
26 years.
It's worse than that. I taught my first college course in 1974, so this is actually year 41 of teaching for me.
Oh my gosh, and you're not worn out yet.
I get tired in the evenings. I'm very good in the morning.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about that after we finish the first half of the show, which will be about who you are personally, so the viewers will have an idea where you're coming from.
Sure.
And why you have the positions that you have and like that. Besides, there are things about you I've noticed in your resume and from talking to you in the past that are interesting that may just come up on their own.
That's fine. You can see if you can stump me. It's not that hard.
No. Okay, shall we start?
Sure.
As you know, I always have 1 or 2 trick questions for my guests.
Okay.
And I can ask those with a surprise, or I can start off with asking you one now.
As you like.
All right. If I were to ask your best friend, who is Michael? And be the first person, pretend that you're your best friend. And Michael is what?
Michael is an odd person. I think almost anybody would have to say that.
Okay.
He is hardworking. He is loyal as a friend. He tries to be, above all, truthful at any point in time. He changes his mind over time, but at any one point in time, he believes in being transparently honest and blunt if I have to be. Sometimes people don't hear you unless you're blunt, I've discovered, and that makes me sad because I don't like to be so blunt. But there is a crisis in education. It's deep-rooted. It's getting worse. And
we'll save that for the second half of the
We'll
show.
save that for the second half.
Okay.
But that's what they would probably say things like that. Odd, honest, sometimes very blunt. Decent sense of humor, especially about himself, because he knows how silly he can be.
I love that part. Okay, and when and where were you born?
I was born in 1949 in
49.
Wichita, Kansas.
Kansas.
That's right, with the Koch brothers. No. The Koch brothers are from Wichita, Kansas, and they do give billions to political campaigns. But no, I'm no relation, and if I were, I think I'd have to get a divorce from that family.
You ready for your second trick question? We'll start
Sure.
off pretty. Why were you born?
Why was I born?
Why does everyone repeat that question back to me?
That's a metaphysical question.
Of course it is.
From my frame of reference,
Yes, from yours.
again, I tend to be honest, so the first thing that comes to my head is, I don't know why I was born in that time and place, but I believe I was reborn. I believe in reincarnation.
Oh boy.
And so this was not the first time I've been born.
Okay.
And it is not likely to be the last because I'm very far from being enlightened.
Okay, we'll spend a little bit of time with that, but not too much.
Not too much. That's a good
because
tangent.
I'm not sure about reincarnation. I'm an agnostic. I don't know, and I'm a-religious also. But we'll see.
It would be a fun tangent. There's some good evidence for it. But the bottom line is, I came into this world probably as a consequence of actions and karma from myself and others in previous lives.
Okay.
And we're all given a set of cards from my point of view.
You're
and
still talking
in this
about-
life, we decide how to play them.
Okay.
And it's not a game. It's very serious. Because what we do in this life echoes through the ages, not
You're-
just for ourselves, personally.
You're insisting on talking about the other lives.
But this relates directly to education and what we should be doing with our lives now. Because from my point of reference, I have more than one life to live. But
Okay.
what we do or don't do
let's-
on any given day
Let's stop there.
echoes through the ages.
I know what that's
Impacts
about.
you, impacts my friends in India who might be watching this on YouTube.
Okay. Do you have a religious preference now?
I'm very eclectic.
Did you ever have a religious preference at one time?
Well, I'm a mix. I was born Missouri Synod Lutheran, very evangelical Protestant. I've been influenced by Quakers, by Buddhists, by Muslims, by Hindus.
Did you identify with any particular religion earlier on when you were small?
I was baptized 3 times in different Protestant denominations.
Okay.
So
Which did you claim for yourself in that period in your life?
I didn't.
Oh. So
Most of us are claim what our parents give us.
But you didn't have a religious preference.
I think you can't really have much of a preference unless
I'm
it's
talking
informed.
about you. You said you. I'm talking about you.
But I know that you, at age 12, have a preference. It's
Yes.
a preference that has been socialized. It's not really your preference.
What's your religious preference today?
Today, I would probably describe myself as a very Christian-centered Hindu.
Christian-centered Hindu. That's interesting. We should have some fun with that.
Well, you could, if you want to make this a theology program.
Oh, we can do whatever you want to do with it.
No, I'd like to get back to education.
Good, good. And I was looking at your resume and all kinds of printed stuff about you, and it's just incredible what you've done in your years and your education beyond universities and those kinds of things. And I enjoy just bantering with you. And I'm still listening to what you're talking about when you talk about your history and what you've done in the past and your years and the process along the way. And I enjoy you.
I'm glad.
Yeah. How much longer will you teach? 41 years you've been doing it.
I'm not as sharp as I used to be. I'm not mentally as good except in the early morning. I think I have another 4 or 5 years of being really beneficial to students. After that point, I think they deserve better in the classroom, and I'll replace myself with someone who is perhaps more in tune with them as they are now, and at least technologically, and at least someone who is sharp enough to keep ahead of them.
And you
Because my
can't-
students challenge me all the time,
I can tell.
and it's good.
Do you see me as a student sometimes in our conversations?
No, I see myself as a student. So I guess the answer is yes, but not in me being teacher, you're being student. I think people teach each other
Yeah.
if they're open to listening.
You betcha. You betcha. Hey, you have a partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife?
I've been married for 31 years
31 years.
to a wonderful woman, Christine, and she is actually at church as I speak. She's going, as I'm here, she's Catholic and she's attending a program of religious education. And I attend Mass with her on Sundays. I was once told by a priest that I'm the best non-Catholic Catholic he knows.
I like
31 years of going to church on Sundays, and yet I've not converted because that would be dishonest.
We could pursue that, but I won't because we're going forever and ever with you.
But in a sense, it's educational because I believe in a great variety of points of view. And when those points of view are not protected in an educational institution to be expressed, to be challenging people from different points of view, then we've lost, as a society, a great deal. If we can't have freedom of expression in an education of higher learning, where can it be?
Do you have children or grandchildren?
I have 3 children. 2 of them have birthdays next week. My oldest is 30. I have an adopted daughter who's 31. My son is 26, and my youngest daughter is 24.
Okay, what are they all doing now?
My adopted daughter has 2 children, so I'm a grandparent. And my oldest biological daughter has a good job for the first time in her life and is trying to pay off extensive education debts. My son is going to community college where I teach.
Where you teach?
At Portland Community College. And my youngest daughter is having a wonderful time as a punk rock musician. Last weekend she was in Montreal, Canada, doing a gig with one of her bands. She's in 3 bands. They don't make a lot of money, but it pays for the airfare, and she's doing what she loves, and I'm happy for her.
You betcha. You betcha. I'm reluctant to ask you this question. It's a typical question, but what you will do with it, I'm not sure. Do you have a political persuasion?
I have many political persuasions.
I knew it.
It's fundamentally, I tend to look at things from a green point of view, ideologically green, and that's confusing to most of your listeners probably, but the Greens of Europe once said in Germany, where the movement really began in earnest, that we're neither left nor right, we try to be in front. And so politically, you can find me on issues quite conservative, sometimes quite liberal, sometimes close to anarchist, and sometimes socialist. And in green ideology, that's not a contradiction. It's kind of a new hybrid. It's a new formulation of looking at the world. And I find myself attempting to be in front, and maybe not doing a very good job of it, but really not left or right.
Do you have an affiliation with a political party in our country today?
I'm a card-carrying Green Party. That's Oregon, Green Party of Oregon, Pacific Green Party.
Yes.
I have been for about 20 years. Though before that, I was registered Democrat for a time. I was registered Republican for a time.
You're all over the place.
I have, well, that's not being flaky. That is based upon the time and place and the people and their positions.
Didn't mean to imply that you were flaky.
No, I know, but for example, Governor Oswald West was before my time. I'm not that old. But back in the 1920s, he was governor of Oregon and a Republican. and one of the best environmentalists this country has ever known.
A Republican?
Yes.
Of course.
He gave us the entire Oregon coast as public access. There cannot be private controlled ownership of any part of the Oregon coast on the Pacific Ocean.
Brief digression. There's a series on public television now about the Roosevelts.
Yes.
I've been watching
I've been watching it too.
It's interesting.
It is.
Please go back to what you were talking about.
Well, Teddy Roosevelt was also an environmentalist.
Yes.
But he was also an imperialist.
Yes.
And I think that wasn't a contradiction for him, but it is for me.
Okay, so much for your political persuasion. Who would you like to see assume the presidency in the next election in our country?
In a sense, that's a really tough question for me.
You bet it is.
Because honestly, I don't think anybody should.
Oh?
I think the power is far too centralized.
Yes.
I think if I was elected president, I would not trust myself to make by myself, with the centralized power that is now in the presidency,
Of course.
decisions of life and death. And since Teddy Roosevelt especially, there's been a view that the president has all powers that are not expressly denied to him by the Constitution. That means he can do anything. I don't like that centralized power. I think we need to decentralize power. That's a very green value. In many ways, it's kind of an American conservative value. It's also an anarchist value, where communities collaborating with one another internally can come up with better solutions to problems than one supposedly bright person.
In the next presidential election, will you vote for a Republican, a Democrat, or somebody else?
I'm almost certainly likely to vote for a Green.
What do you think of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders as being president? Those two people.
Well, Elizabeth Warren would probably be a better choice than most any other Democrat.
Oh, yes.
She's certainly environmentalist. The but is always coming.
Okay.
I think while she worries about the impact of big money on campaigns, she's still willing to accept it. Bernie Sanders is more to my liking because I think he believes more in decentralized power like I do, and would not be another Teddy Roosevelt for good. So you can have Teddy Roosevelts for evil, and you can have Teddy Roosevelts for good. The issue is centralized power, and I think people need to be empowered at the grassroots.
Yes.
Rather than somehow following a leader like Martin Luther King even, who's one of my heroes. The civil rights movement was weak because it had too centralized a leadership. You assassinate the leader and things can fall into disarray. A more grassroots, broad-based movement is not so vulnerable to that kind of problem.
Depends on the opposition. If it's powerful enough and has enough money, then the people who oppose the opposition can't do anything about it unless we have another revolution.
Truth crushed to earth shall rise again.
I'm unhappy with, that was a leading question I started a few minutes ago and I just realized now. I'm unhappy with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and those are people I've been admiring for a long time because they will not speak out against what Israel is doing in Gaza. They will not take on AIPAC. And on the other hand, if they tell the truth about Israel and the Zionists and AIPAC, then they won't have money to be elected again. So that was the leading question there. If you want to say something to that, why? Just
I have my truth, and I suspect, relating to Israel and Palestine. I've been to Palestine. 4 years ago, I was in the West Bank, among other things, giving a talk on Mahatma Gandhi. How's that for weird? Another
weird.
tangent.
Oh, wow.
But the thing I want to say is, I respect other people's points of view because I'm never entirely sure how complete my point of view is in its truthfulness. I'm a big believer, and this relates to education, relates to everything that we'll be talking about tonight. I've been influenced by the Buddhist story of the 5 or 6 or 7 blind men and the elephant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And I admit to being a blind man, or a blind person is what you
Tell the
want to
story
say.
very briefly about those.
There are variations of it, but let's say there's a 7-person Portland Community College Board of Directors.
Okay.
Okay?
I like that.
And these 7 people are physically blind. That's the metaphor. And there's an elephant. One grabs the tail and says, "Oh, the elephant is like a rope." One grabs a leg and says, "No, the elephant is like a large tree trunk." Another one grabs the ear and says, "No, the elephant is like a banana leaf." The one grabs the trunk and says, "No, the elephant is like a long hose." And maybe the 6th says, "No, the end of the trunk, the elephant is like kind of a slimy, wet, I don't know what it is."
Okay.
Now the 6 don't know the elephant. They know a piece of it. They need to communicate with each other. In my opinion, that's how you come to better understand the whole truth. In Palestine, there are many points of view. If you've absolutized your own point of view as the only correct view, I feel sad because we need to listen to all points of view. What the Portland Community College Board of Directors, I believe, is missing is not good people who have their own truths and contribute a lot to helping each other understand. But what they don't have is someone with their hand on the body of the elephant.
And that would be you.
That would be someone like me. Someone who understands the institution of that particular college, the culture of the college, has lived in it, knows the people in it, knows how the body moves, the history of the body, its health.
We'll talk more about that when we finish this segment.
But it's true, I think, of any particular issue that you might want to raise. I value a Republican, Democrat, Socialist. Different people are touching the elephant. We need to listen to everyone. I need to listen to everyone. Because however firm my opinion may be, I'm never sure that I'm very right. I need to improve.
I feel secure in my opinions when I have them, and I have them very often, probably more often than I should. But I like to feel
I'm fairly secure,
I've
but
done my homework.
the but is there.
Yeah?
You can still teach me something.
Okay. Persons from the past are alive today that you admired, particularly look up to. You mentioned the Buddha.
Oh, he's hate cannot destroy hate. Only love can destroy hate. 600 years before Christ.
Okay. Who else did you admire, or you still admire today, that's alive today? Any other names come to mind?
Folks that are
We talked
alive
about
today.
Gandhi.
Well, Gandhi, of course, died back in 1948. He was killed. But his spirit lives on. So, one person I still admire today is, I would describe her as my cosmic sister in India. Her name is Dina Patel. Dina, if you watch this on YouTube, I have just mentioned your name. I've been communicating with her frequently of late because her brother just died.
Tell her to watch me on Don Baham YouTube.
Okay. But she is a Gandhian. She's a lifelong Gandhian. She's a very principled person. She's devoted her entire life to service. And she makes me feel very small in my commitment and my sacrifice. She's lived a life of sacrifice. And very few people know her. She's not famous. She'll never be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Why do you admire
But I
her?
admire her.
Why?
I admire her commitment that even when she feels, and that's frequently the case now, that she's in darkness, that no one cares about Gandhian principles or nonviolence, that Mr. Modi is now Prime Minister of India, Modi, who has a history of association with the RSS, which is a political movement that actually killed Gandhi. He was an RSS member who assassinated the father of India, Gandhi.
Yes.
She feels like now the people of India are in a sense almost re-assassinating Gandhi by electing a prime minister who is, some would describe him as neo-fascist. So she's in a dark place. I feel for her, but I admire her because she carries on. No matter how dark it is, she still tries to shine her own light, live her own life, stay true to her own commitments and values. And that inspires me.
Are you doing that yourself?
I try. I don't think I have quite the challenges in my personal life as she has.
Of course. Yeah. We better take a break here and then go back to the subject of the show. You're just so fascinating to visit with about most anything. So shall we take a break, Mr. E, Mr. Director? Yeah, the mics are off now. Okay, we're back. For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, you're watching Conversations with Dr. Don. It's an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about. And we're talking to Dr. Sonnleitner, who's a fascinating and interesting person in his own right. And now we're going to go into the second half of the show where we'll be talking more about the crisis in American education, And I might ask you a couple of questions that are pretty elemental, basic, that may seem funny on the face. What's education?
Well, education in a broadest sense is the process whereby we learn new information. It can be experiential, it can be all sorts of things. We begin to be educated as soon as we open our eyes as babies. Even in utero, we might be developing an appreciation for Mozart or classical music, if that happens to be in the environment.
I believe that too.
Well, I think there's good evidence for it. And so it's part of the socialization process in any society. That's education. In a formal sense, formal education is going to school, right?
Yeah.
And formal education can be vocational, like learning to be an electrician or a plumber. It can also be a vocation in itself. And by that, I don't necessarily mean learning to be a teacher like me. I mean lifelong learning, a commitment to continuing to use critical thinking skills and learn from one another as we move through life. So there's vocational education in a formal sense, and then there's kind of education as vocation, which is more liberal arts. Finding out about Shakespeare and the history of Mexico and all those pieces of information that can help enrich our lives later as we communicate to people.
Do you know many educated people?
Yeah, sure. It's all a matter of degree. That's a pun. Some PhDs are not very educated people in the sense that I'm talking about.
Some PhDs
Don't overestimate the degree of the degree and how that represents much knowledge. Sometimes we can be very narrowly educated and just know a tremendous amount about the history of Islam, and that's a big amount of information there.
What would be...
But you might not know anything about history of Mexico or Shakespeare or other traditions. And so I'm a firm believer in education as vocation, that is broad-based learning, critical thinking, and lifelong learning. If we can instill that sort of thirst for knowledge and truth, then we've done a real service to the world. We're not doing that service so well these days.
So I can look at a fellow human being and say, that person is an educated man or woman. How would I make that kind of an assessment for that individual when I can say that he or she is an educated human being?
Well, don't base it on the quality of their sport coat. This was $5 from Goodwill.
That's one of the reasons I love
so
you.
be very careful
I'm
about
a very cheap
appearances.
Person. That's good looking at it. I like Goodwill.
I think you can make some judgment based upon how the person interacts. Are they a good listener? I think a very educated person knows that they don't know very much. If you have the thirst for knowledge and truth, then you know, maybe I am an expert with electronics, but I don't know much about GMOs or food. If you can know that you know very little, you become a good listener. So an educated person better be a good listener. Because they know that they need to learn more. An uneducated person frequently is someone who talks an awful lot. In their insecurity, they might want to say, I have a PhD. I have 3 PhDs. Oh, I'm the best thing since sliced toast. You know.
So perhaps the number one criteria.
But that's a sign of, I think, not only insecurity, but maybe a very narrow knowledge base, and they don't want people to ask questions of them that they can't answer.
Can a person who claims to be an educated person be a genuine lover? Are they capable of loving another human being?
I think they're probably more capable of loving in an unselfish sense another human being, because they're genuinely interested in that other person, not just perhaps the physical attraction that might be superficially there, but who they are inside. They want to know who's inside. They want to learn from that person.
Yeah.
And an educated person probably has more humility than I have. And I'm still learning.
What is the crisis in education in America? What is that crisis you're talking about?
It has so many features. One of the manifestations is, we're number one! We're number one! We're the greatest country on the face of the planet! We're the greatest country in history! Everyone should be like us! That sort of orientation, if it was said by an individual like me, I probably turned off some of your viewers right now by role-playing. But if I was genuinely like that, would you like me? Would you want to be with me? Would you... we are bullies in the world. We are very narrow-minded, in that sense, undereducated people. and review like that throughout much of the world where I've traveled.
And this is the reason, or one of the reasons, that there was a crisis in education in America? For what you
Well,
just
it's a
said?
manifestation, because I think we tend to value facts and knowledge and expertise
Yes.
more than the search for knowledge and the expansion of our knowledge base and expertise. We're not good listeners. We might have a fair number of PhDs, and that's wonderful, but often they're not good listeners. They think they know most of it, if not all of it.
Do you think those people you admired and you talked about a few moments ago were good listeners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you a good listener?
I could improve. I could.
But you are.
Ask my wife.
You are a good listener.
I try to be self-conscious about it. It's hard if you're passionately concerned about things like over half of adults in America cannot name the 3 branches of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Now that's factual undereducation. You can't say legislative, executive, judicial. Citizens of the state of Oregon here in the U.S., over half cannot name the 2 U.S. senators from this state by name. In fact, half can't even say there are 2 U.S. senators
So we're
from
going to be
this state.
talking about the education system in Oregon and in Portland now, and why it is you want to assume that position on the board, because there's a crisis in education. I'm not quite clear. Help me out, Liz. What's
Sure.
the crisis about?
Well, the crisis is multifaceted, but it's manifest in ignorance, as perceived in much of the rest of the world, and self-centeredness. I think fundamentally it's rooted in insecurity, which is economic and otherwise. Now, I'm going to bring it down a little bit to earth.
Please do.
I'll try to here. The 30% or so of students in the United States, high school students, do not finish high school on time. They're dropouts.
Mm-hmm.
Close to that number, about 25%, cannot functionally read or write. We're not devoting the resources we need to special needs students of backgrounds that are typically challenged backgrounds,
So those
economically challenged backgrounds.
Those are examples of the things that says that there is a crisis in education, what you're saying.
Even from a business point of view, the United States ranks no better than 15th in the world in terms of the quality of our education and its product.
And that's outrageous.
We spend far more than any other country on the face of the planet. It's not simply a matter of money. But in this country, it is partly a matter of money, because if you underpay the teaching profession, for example, you'll have fewer people able to survive meaningfully on a teaching income, and they'll choose other professions. And so you might have some educators who don't have the passion to give the time because they're too busy moonlighting.
So then our educational system here in America is not producing citizens who are educated and
Culturally educated or
equipped to live a life that's they can appreciate and feel good about.
and oftentimes they take jobs that they don't especially appreciate or feel good about.
So
They survive, but they're not happy with their lives. They're not empowered oftentimes.
and it's because of the educational system.
It's
what
not just
education is doing.
It's the culture that is breeding the education system.
Yes.
And we have, for example, a defunding of education and an increasing of student debt. That's in more recent years, but that's one major reason why it's getting much worse now. And it's getting quite bad. $1.3 trillion in student debt, higher education debt. That's a higher total than the entire credit card debt of the country.
Why is that?
Because we're spending less of public funds towards public education.
And who makes the decisions about what monies we spend on public education?
Public officials.
And who are public officials? How they get to the position that
They're
they're in?
elected, and they're oftentimes elected by interest groups that have large amounts of money who are not particularly interested in a population that is full of critical thinkers and creative problem solvers.
What are they interested in, Michael?
People who are useful in a narrow field, plumbers, electricians, the other tradesmen, who can build what we want to be built.
The we you're talking about?
The we are the people in the top, at least 5% of the U.S. population that control over half the wealth.
Why are they that way?
Would you want a highly educated population always critically thinking about the wealth distribution that you yourself are benefiting by?
Why are they that way?
Oftentimes inheritance, sometimes luck, sometimes genius creativity. Variety of reasons why the wealthy become wealthy.
Could it be greed?
It could be, to some extent, greed.
Is that an original sin built into our genetic makeup? We never get enough, and some of us are more afflicted than others?
I think culturally that is easy to conclude that in the U.S. culture because we see a lot of greed.
Yeah.
But if you go to cultures elsewhere in the world, there are many other cultures that are much more collective, cooperative, and sharing cultures. I don't think it's genetic. Greed is not a genetic reality. It is a cultural product. And we produce it a lot. And we export it.
We being Americans.
We Americans produce it a lot, export it, and we don't really think about it.
What can we do about it?
It's just human nature. Can't do anything about it. I'm saying it's not just human nature. And our education system can help people see other cultures and other ways of behaving and then make the value judgment as to what kind of life you would like to live in this world.
How would you arrange our system such that the people, the citizens, can have the kind of education that we're talking about?
It helps for it to be exceptionally low cost.
Okay.
Otherwise, you don't have people just at the back of the bus. You have people not on the bus at all. The education bus, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
My foster daughter, who is now my daughter, came from Mexico. She was the first in her family to graduate from high school. In fact, she was the first one to go beyond the 3rd grade.
Your daughter?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm very proud of Margarita. I won't go further than that.
Okay.
But I'm just going to say that with encouragement, she had a thirst for knowledge, a passion for learning, and she has achieved what anyone else can achieve.
Where did she
if
get
they
those
have that
qualities?
nurturing.
Where did she get those impulses?
Well, I think part of it is internal, because anyone is a flower that can blossom if you have enough light and water and environmental circumstances.
And love?
Yes. And I might have a little credit in her case, but don't give me so much credit. It's really all of us that need to be part of that environment that are going to help other Margaritas to blossom and become lifelong learners. Then we will be able to boast about America properly.
Yeah.
And not be looked down upon as being braggarts. We need to learn from others, other cultures. Most folks can't even find Syria on a map, and Syria is now in the news daily because of the 200,000 people that have died there in the past 3 years. But they can't find it on a map. Most people can't.
Is that because of the educational system?
It's the system that is valuing more vocational education than education as a vocation. We're in the business of education. Education has become an industry to get a job. Jobs are important. It's really nice to be able to pay the bills.
Of course.
I grant that. But we need electricians and plumbers and others who know where Mexico is on a map. We need to know, they need to be able to say what the 3 branches of government are. They need to be able to vote intelligently if we believe in democracy at all. The United States has the lowest voter turnout of any industrial democracy in the world. Out of 26, we have consistently the lowest voter turnout. Ignorant people, not through their own choice, but through their environment not providing them a stimulus for knowledge, don't see any sense to voting. That really allows an elite a pretty free hand to make policies that they care to. And why would that elite want to arm the masses with a capacity to question their power?
Okay.
It wouldn't make any sense, would it? So we need, as a society, to empower especially those who have the most challenged backgrounds.
So this seems a circular discussion. We need to have an educated populace.
Yes.
So that they can act in their own real self-interest.
Yes.
And the society and the culture as a whole.
Yes.
Well, how do we get that? The system isn't working now. But this is the reason you're calling it a crisis.
It is, and it's getting worse. In 1999, the state of Oregon here in the U.S. Provided 71% of the costs of Portland Community College students.
Uh-huh.
Now it's 31%. In a mere 14 years, we've gone from 71% state support to 31% state support. And we've shifted the burden of that onto individual students, hence the debt crisis. The total student debt in the United States in 1999 was $200 million, and that's a lot of money. But now it's $1,200 million.
And if it keeps going in this direction, what kind of an austerity are we going to have 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, we'll drop from 15th down as compared to the rest of the world in terms of our educated population. We won't rebound. We implode. Sooner or later, people get very, very angry at continuing to not being able to feed their children adequately.
And then what happens? What has happened historically?
There will be some kind of revolution.
Uh-huh.
I would hope that it could be a nonviolent revolution.
How often does that happen?
Happened in Gandhi's India. Happened in Nkrumah's, Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Ghana, I mean.
Ghana, yeah.
It's happened elsewhere. If it's a violent revolution, I think it would be understandable. With my values, I would have a hard time actively endorsing it, but I would not actively oppose it.
Uh-huh.
Because people need to act according to their own lights. They need to be empowered to take on their own destiny according to what they make sense to them. It's in our self-interest. It's in the wealthy self-interest of the United States to see that we all need to have a basic living wage. $15 an hour is probably not adequate, and that's considered radical now.
There is something built into the personalities, or whatever you want to call it, in the super rich, where they're looking at short-term gain because they need to have more and more and more, and they never get enough. And if they can't extract any more wealth and power from other countries around the world, then they'll come to our own shores and extract it from the ordinary citizens and the poor people in America. And I believe there's another revolution brewing. I just hope I see it before I die. And I'm sure that I'm on some lists now in Washington, D.C., being a revolutionary.
But in the short term, what could someone elected to a small little position at Portland Community College,
that's
representing
the question.
a mere 98,000 people, which is really not that many considering the world's population.
I'm glad you brought us back
do?
to it. Okay.
Well,
what can you do?
We can develop a culture that values vocational education, as we do, as well as education as a vocation. We can do that with very little money. It's a matter of prioritizing how we're spending what we have.
And your influence on the board will move the board in that direction?
I would be 1 vote in 7.
Yeah.
But I would, for example, I would question, should we give a substantial pay raise to administrators? Our district president already makes more than the governor of Oregon. Should we do that as a priority, or should we hold the line more on tuition and have low to no tuition increases?
What would you do as a member of the board?
I would seek to have low to no tuition increases.
I think you just lost some votes.
That's fine.
Principle over practical.
It is practical. It's not practical to believe that students can go more and more in debt. We're losing students now because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
We're destroying our own market if you want to consider the student to be a consumer of a product. We're losing our consumers because they can't afford the product. The system is imploding. It needs to be, we need to hold the line on cost for the student and not see the student as a consumer. The student is a fellow citizen of a society that needs to be encouraged to empower themselves so as to change things that hopefully will help save the world from itself, environmentally and otherwise. Now, that's what a little person with a $700 million, roughly, budget per year at PCC might help do. Just reorient the priorities a bit in the budget. We are the largest educational institution in the state of Oregon. We have, the counts vary, but about 85,000 different students taking a course at my institution per year. That's about 34,000 full-time equivalent students. That's larger than the University of Oregon or Oregon State University or Portland State University.
Wow.
If we can have even some small cultural revolution movement at Portland Community College, this could have a rippling effect elsewhere. I don't care that much about how our tuition compares with the other 14 community colleges here in Oregon. I would like us to have the cheapest, but to me that's not the goal. I would like to inspire the others to also see how they can hold the cost for the student, high quality, open access education at as low a cost as possible. Why can't it be? When I came to Portland Community College 26 years ago, the tuition was $23.50 per credit.
You're kidding me.
That was real. That's not pie in the sky. That's not idealism. That was a fact. It's now going to be $92. That's a 195% increase in my career time at Portland Community College. That's unacceptable. Well, how could it be otherwise? It was otherwise. This is not pie in the sky. This is not something that is impossible to achieve. We had it. We lost it. And I'm angry. Because it's those who can least afford that get left off the bus entirely.
Okay.
It's not just that they're at the back of the bus. And they are disproportionately non-white, because non-white people in this country are disproportionately poor. And they have the double whammy of racism. But just on pure economic reasons, it must be changed. The state needs to value education in Oregon more than prisons. We're one of 5 states that spend more on prisons than we do on higher education. That's unacceptable.
We're just getting wound up here, and we've got to start shutting down.
I understand.
And it's just delightful.
Sorry I got so intense there.
Oh, don't apologize for being real and dynamic, emotionally literate. Talk to the viewers about your last thoughts about the subject of the show or anything else going on. Take a minute and a half or so and tell them what you think.
Well, relating to what I can do, because you have to decide what you can do.
Yes.
What I can do is give up my teaching career. And because I would have to retire to be on the Portland Community College Board of Directors. It's by law, it would be required. I'm willing to give up my career. I'm willing to take a cut in pay because the Board of Directors would have me retired and working as a volunteer. I'm willing to do that. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? You could vote for me, but that's pretty small potatoes. What can you do to encourage your children to learn? Read to your children, help your children. Become involved in politics. Don't see it merely as a dirty word, because if you don't help to influence policies, others will, and you can cry in your beer, but that's not going to help anything.
Okay.
I would be the first employee of PCC ever to be on the board. It's a scandal. We need someone who has a hand on the body. We need all 7 blind people to be talking to each other.
Okay, we got to stop now. Wow, thank you so much. Yeah. PSAs, we have time for any to watch my shows on the web. Google Don Baham YouTube. There's hundreds of shows, all sorts of people I've interviewed, and there's a few almost as interesting as my friend here. And ACLU, I've got to talk about the American Civil Liberties Union. Without the ACLU, how civil liberties would be further in the tubes than they are now. And what else do we have? Oh, we got to end corporate personhood, take back our Constitution, our country. Go to www.movetoamend.org and learn what you can do to take back our country and declare that corporations are not persons and money is not speech. Remember KFC? I always tell you that. Not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable. To you too. And you too, Mike. And you too. And you too. And you too, Bello. Good night.